contract zone would then go to the ordinance committee at an ordinance committee meeting later this year. Generally, with our ordinance committee discussions, any sort of action to be considered by the council needs to get a majority vote from the ordinance committee members to actually move forward in the process. Is that how this works?
Thank you. I wouldn't say to move forward. The ordinance committee makes a recommendation one way or another. You could make a negative recommendation at the committee. It's still going to come back to the council to take action on.
It'll still come back to the council.
So something does not go to a committee to die or stop.
Yeah.
The committee has an obligation to the rest of the council to make a recommendation one way or another, or no recommendation. So you bring it back and then the council takes action on it. So the actionable items of the town council would be when it comes out of committee, and the action to potentially send it to the planning board. And then when it comes back from the planning board, that's also an actionable time where you would say yay or nay. So there would be 2 points in the process where the whole council would say yes or no, or some modification of that, as well as at the committee level, you would just make a recommendation.
Thank you. And a comment or two, and then maybe one more question. I do think that obviously we've got a lot of members from the public here. A lot of them were here a couple months ago as well. I view if this goes to the ordinance committee, I would like to see it be an opportunity not just to discuss the contract zone, but also to more fully address some of the concerns that were raised by residents that we chose not to take any specific action on at that June meeting. So I don't know if that would mean that some sort of slight amendment to this proposed motion to include some additional considerations at the ordinance committee level would be appropriate. But I do think that I see it as an opportunity to further that conversation. I've heard some people, I've been encouraged by some people asking for more dialogue, and I do think it's important for us to discuss this, even though some of us obviously have a lot at stake and might be, quite passionate about it. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Madam Chair, if I may. I think if we discover through having the public come that there are things that may need addressing, that would be born from the discussion we have, as opposed to trying to pinpoint something that is not necessarily there for us to put pen to paper. So like I would say let's use this as a proactive way to find out what really needs to happen, and that's partly why I wanted to have this discussion at ordinances. Bring the people in, let's hear what you have to say, and then, what gets born from that is, because government is, okay, we hear one problem, what's the next problem and the next problem, and I think you've heard enough from me from parking issues, and even though we may solve one parking issue or another piece, another issue is born from that parking issue. So I think from the discussion, everybody needs to come with open ears and good hearts to have a open dialogue and discussion.
I would agree, and I would also say that anything that comes from the discussions in the meeting or any ideas, any counselors, can bring something, actionable item back to the council, so, as usual. So I think that's, if that's what you were getting at, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to move the question.
All right. So we need a second for moving the question, yeah? Okay, Councilor Roy?
Everyone know what that means.
Does everybody, I think everybody on this side knows what it means. Does everybody know what it means? Okay, we're going to go directly to the vote, and we're stopping discussion. All right, so we don't vote on it, right?
You vote on moving the question.
Yeah, so all those in favor of moving the question? Okay, 6 yeas. All right, and to the vote. All those in favor?
Yeah.
4 yeas, and all those opposed?
This one, no, I'm in favor.
In favor?
Yeah.
Okay. 5 yeas. All those opposed? 1. Councilor Siegel. Counselor Pratt to resume his seat, or you can read if you want.
Item 2024 8-4, action to consider a bond request for the Gorham School Department. Councilor Phillips sponsored. Proposed order 24-106, order that the town council approves sending to the voters for the November 5th, 2024 election a question authorizing the capital expenditure and bonding of funds pursuant to section 901 of the Gorham Town Charter as follows. Project number 1, Gorham High School cafeteria expansion and modular phase 1 addition, $9,034,000. Question 2, Narragansett HVAC, $460,575. Project 3, village parking repaving and access drive to White Birch Lane, $1,627,451. Project 4, rebuild the tennis courts and move to GMS site, $2,541,250. Project 5, Gorham High School parking additions, repaving and traffic calming measures, $699,000. Project 6, Narragansett maintenance building, $400,000. Project 7, village parking expansion and Roby connector, $1,762,214. And Project 8, Great Falls sidewalk replacement, $240,381, for the total request of $16,674,871. And be it further ordered that the town council authorizes the town clerk to schedule a public hearing on the item before the November 5th, 2024 election.
All right, is there a motion? Motion by Counselor Siegel, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Wilder Cross.
Madam Chair, so I would like to disclose, I feel like I'm the disclosure guy tonight, seriously, that my wife does work for the school department, although this bond does not affect her pay whatsoever, so I feel like I could stay for this conversation, but I'd open it up to the council. If they feel like I'm somehow biased, feel free to tell me to leave.
All right, do we want to take a vote on allowing Counselor Pratt to stay? That would be my recommendation, but.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so all those in favor of letting Counselor Pratt stay and not recuse himself? Okay. All those who want him to recuse himself? Counselor Siegel?
I'm abstaining. I feel like it's, you know.
Yeah. So Counselor Siegel? We don't need him. All right, so we're going to start this off. We're going to have Heather Perry come up and give a presentation. There will be after, yeah, after the presentation. That way, yeah.
Norm, you're close to an aisle, so if I need backup, you can come up here, okay? And let's see if I can get my computer to work.
Madam Chair, just a quick question. Will we be able to ask questions of the superintendent before the public comment? What order are you?
I think we'll do the public comment after her presentation, because
Okay.
she may be answering questions and comments that people have, so. And then we can call her back up whenever we want to, so.
Thank you.
I was going to put the timer up and give you 5 minutes, but no.
Really?
I'll just-
That's good, okay, all right. I did want to take just a moment, and I hope this isn't part of my time, but I did want to correct, and this is likely my fault, and so Ephraim, please, my fault, but I think that the numbers got transposed in the total amount. We're actually requesting $16,764,000, so that 6 and 7 somehow got transposed. And I'll show you that in just a minute. So if you added those numbers up, that's what you would get, so my apologies if that was my mistake.
Thank you.
All right, I wanted to take a few minutes and just review quickly the projects that we're requesting from the school department. There are 8 total projects. I want to give a little bit of history too and some background, just for folks to hopefully have a better understanding of why the requests are being made and what the implications are. Certainly there is an opportunity for questions and answers, and at some point I will be here all evening. If you need me to answer any questions, I can certainly do that. So first, what I'd like to do is 4 things. A little history, I'd like to review that. I'd like to provide an overview of the projects themselves, just briefly. And then I want to talk a little bit about why now, because I'm sure folks are wondering why, after you just passed a school budget with just 2 votes total, you're now requesting a bond of this size. Valid question, so I hope to answer that as part of the presentation. And then implications moving forward as we go forward for what these projects are. So just a quick history, it's only one slide, I promise. I just wanted to give folks an indication of some of the work that's been done in the school systems, trying to get a handle on our capital facilities planning here in the school district. It started 2014 with the GHS renovation conversation, which didn't go anywhere, but it spurred more conversation. And then we did a 2016 Oak Point study where we looked at all of our buildings and different configurations of how it is that we could address the growing student population at that time that we had. That was a very thorough study that was done at that point in time. Then we had some really in-depth work done by Harriman as we were looking at the GHS renovation project again. That was looking at a high school project that could have been about $72 million locally funded, which that did not move forward either. And some of these numbers can get quite scary when you're talking about capital projects for the schools, and that's because we have a lot of buildings and we have a lot of value in those buildings, and the numbers are pretty big when you start thinking about capital construction for school systems. Then we did after all that, I think we came to the conclusion we need a bigger, more broad look as a whole town about what our facilities needs are, not just the schools, but the municipality as well. And so we together jointly did a study in 2022 with CHA that really looked very closely at all of our buildings across the community, the public buildings, and where they were, what their life expectancy was, where the failures were, how we could maybe address those, and did a nice rating sheet for that. And that was what came out of that really primarily was a conversation jointly held between the town council and the school committee that we really need to come together with a 10-year, the school needs to put together a very clear 10-year capital plan. Here's the things that we need, here's the order that we think that we need them in, and start bringing these projects forward in a referendum. And so we did do that, and we created a 10-year capital plan, and we've been sort of picking away at that for the past couple of years and thinking about how can we get some of these projects moving forward because the needs are so great. And then throughout that whole time, we've actually also approved several smaller bonds and to accommodate for roofing projects, HVAC projects at the middle school. We had to redo the heat pumps over there. We had modular expansions that we've had to do. So we've had other smaller referendums as we've gone through, but we're starting certainly to get to a point where the needs are growing and the price tags are growing along with it. So that's kind of just a little history. Pretty big, broad, not too detailed. Why now? Why are we looking at the projects that we're looking at right now? Our capital needs don't go away. They just kind of keep getting bigger, and if left unaddressed, they just continue to grow. And as time marches forward, costs also continue to grow. And so it's just something that if you don't do it now, it grows and snowballs and gets bigger down the road. And I think we've seen that, and we're seeing that, and we're going to continue to see that. So why not wait for better fiscal times? I think the answer to that is there really isn't a better fiscal time. As that time keeps growing, these needs don't go away, and they're something that just it costs money. And there's no better fiscal times in the future because costs inflate. These are the 8 projects that we're looking at. You listed them earlier. Thank you, Lori, for reading those out. But those are the 8 projects. They are in priority order. We just revised the priority order about a couple of weeks ago based on some great feedback that we got from the facilities committee with the town. And so we readjusted some of the priorities a little bit, but the projects are listed there. We also did reduce overall a small amount in the budget based on those conversations with the facilities committee as well, mostly under project number 5, which is a GHS parking. We were able to reduce some pieces there, and I'll explain that in a moment. What I'd like to do is briefly, I'm going to go through each one of these projects just to give people a sense of what they are, and then we'll end with some questions probably. This is a GHS cafeteria expansion and other things. What this is it does several things for us. We are looking, and this is where it incorporates some of the bigger picture stuff, we are looking at a Department of Education capital construction project application. We are looking at 3 project applications, 1 for the high school, 1 for Village Elementary School, 1 for Narragansett Elementary School. We do that because that gives us the best chance of getting one of those projects funded. There's no guarantees, however, that any of those projects will be funded, and even if they were, and we wound up in the top 10 list on the state for one of those projects to be funded, we were still 10 years out on actually being able to get into a building with the capital construction funding from the state. With that being said, we're going to run into some problems before that 10-year time frame with our high school and its current facilities. There are a couple of things going on simultaneously. One is that we are currently in a lull of our enrollment at the high school. Within the next 3 to 4 years, that is going to go up significantly. We'll be back very quickly to 900 students at the high school within the next 3 to 4 years. That alone is a problem for a building that was built for 750 students. Add in, though, a secondary problem that is also addressing us right now with our populations of students is that we are seeing significantly increasing numbers of special education students in our high needs populations, which means that those students require more square footage to educate. That's just the name of the game. So if you have a classroom of 25 students and one teacher, that's a general classroom, special education classroom, high needs, you often have 6 students in an entire classroom. And that's a pretty high number. So you can see what that might do. So we are running into space issues at the high school within the 10-year time frame. The school committee had talked at length around how do we address that. We have developed a 3-phase program to how to address via a modular expansion project what we see as the full needs of the high school if we are not funded for a capital project. The first phase is what we're requesting right now because that's the one that we would need the most immediately. And this is a brick and mortar expansion of the cafeteria. If you see there's a highlighted white area on that picture, the one that's sort of going vertically, that would be the expansion of the cafeteria that would take place there. There'd be a hallway that would be added, and then we would add modular classroom spaces. There's 8 total in that big block there at the bottom. There would be 8 classroom spaces there. Of those 8, 1 space would be taken up by utilities, and you'd have to also have 1 space taken up by adult education, and moving that from the middle school to address some overcrowding that we have at the middle school. And then you would also add 6 classroom spaces in that first expansion. So what you're getting out of this particular first phase is an expanded cafeteria, so students are not eating in the lobby area, that we have a little more space there for those students as we continue to grow a little bit. We're also adding some bathrooms down in there, and then there would be those 6 classroom spaces and an adult ed that would be added in that. That is the first project expansion. Even if funded, the question why now, again, as I said, even if we're funded for MDOE capital project, that's 10 years out, and we would be running into problems well before that point in time. So that is the high school expansion. Narragansett HVAC replacement. This project will replace the original HVAC systems in the main building of Narragansett Elementary School, which was built in the 1980s. Those systems are well beyond their life expectancy. We have been having some problems with them recently. We've struggled through COVID with those systems. They are beginning to fail at this point in time. If we have an actual failure, then we would have to emergency replace, which would be a much more expensive undertaking than a planful replacing of the HVAC systems. And so that's why we've got it here as a planful replacement of that HVAC system. So why now? The systems are beginning to fail, and they are past their useful life. And if we don't do it now, the likelihood is high that we might have an emergency situation that will cost much more money, and we'd have to replace it. Project number 3 is village parking, repaving, and access drive. You will notice on this list of 8 items that there are 2 items related to Village Elementary School grounds and basically parking and traffic flow. If anybody has ever been to Village Elementary School on an open house night or any major event that we've had at Village Elementary School, you can probably understand why we're having some of these conversations. This first one, though, is mostly about just the existing site. The existing site, although I do have to say thank you so much to Public Works for their wonderful job at the mouth of the entrance of Village Elementary School. That was a great job paving. There was a crater there that we were losing some vehicles in at the end of the year, so I appreciate that. But even with that addition, thank you, there are many still needs in the parking area that we have at Village Elementary School. With the pavement, the sidewalks are in poor condition, which leaves us open to liabilities for pedestrian traffic, which we have our most number of walkers here at Village Elementary School. And parking and areas there are very poor conditions for the buses and for traffic going in. So what this would do is really, it would grind down, resurface existing areas, and it would replace existing sidewalks and pavement areas. This would also, in this one, this adds a access route or an access drive to White Birch Lane. That might sound familiar to many of you because you talked about White Birch Lane as part of a development that's going in behind over there by Village School at Roby Park area, or Roby area. And what this would do, it would create an access road over to that White Birch Lane road. The reason for that is that right now that is a single traffic lane, and that is the only way in and out of Village is just one entrance, which does not do well for any of the, again, any major thing that we do. Emergency vehicles getting in and out of there, if there were ever an emergency, is very difficult to do that. Just offering another way to get traffic flowing through that area in an emergency situation would be very beneficial. And if that White Birch Lane piece is going through, then we think that that makes sense to do at this time. So why now? It would reduce wear and tear on buses and other traffic in the area. It would improve safety for pedestrians and cars, and it would improve safety for additional access drive on that backside. So that's what we're talking about there. Then we're going to rebuild number 4, project number 4, which I think is where some people would like to talk a little bit more than others. The other ones are not quite as interesting. Pavement is never as interesting as tennis. But the project number 4 is rebuilding the tennis courts and moving them from the middle school site. I want to be clear because there's been a lot of misinformation out there about the tennis courts. Number 1, they are still where they are at the high school. Number 2, they are in very poor condition at this point in time. Number 3, we have gone to experts to see what it would take to resurface, redo something that is less than basically building up new tennis courts, and they're not willing to do it. Basically, those tennis courts have been there for 25 years on that site, well beyond the life expectancy of tennis courts and sort of the underpinnings that are there for tennis courts. We can't just repave or resurface. We have to rebuild. And knowing that if we have to rebuild and we have to spend that money anyway, if there's a possibility that down the road we might need, if we're not approved for DOE capital project, we might need the space where those tennis courts are for the phase 2, not the phase 1, but phase 2 of the modular expansions at the high school, then it wouldn't make sense for us to expend a lot of money rebuilding them on their current site and then moving them 2 years, 3 years down the road. So the proposal is to move them to the middle school site where there is space, which is where actually tennis courts were originally sort of cited for when we did the middle school project many years ago at the point in time. And so that's where we would be looking to do that. We would be looking to also put 5 courts in instead of the 4 that we have now, which allow for competition play. So that's what that would do. It would basically rebuild the tennis courts with lighting, move them to the middle school site where school can use it, but also community can use at that point in time, and it would be open for that type of use on that site. Why now? Existing unsafe conditions on the courts, inability to repair existing courts, and future modular expansions will require use of the existing site. I did want to take a moment, if it's okay, for Tim to come up just really quickly. Again, there's been a lot of misinformation about what is currently going on with it, Tim. Would you mind, you're part of my administrative report, just give a brief, like, Cliff Notes version, please, about what's currently going on with the tennis courts. And while he's doing that, I'm going to show the pictures that are on the next slide. These are the pictures of the existing tennis court. Sure.
Thank you. I have like 8 pages. No. Thank you for just a few minutes. I think earlier last week, Councilor Sims sent some questions. They were great questions, really diving into what's going on with tennis and the courts and our programming. And so I appreciate that and the opportunity to hopefully answer some of those questions in a way that you were looking for. But just want to talk about tennis. There's our courts right there. Those pictures were taken. I took pictures yesterday. Some of those pictures were taken from the spring, and those were last week. Yep. I spoke at our Dine and Discuss back in November that some of our counselors were at, and really stated that our biggest issue right now are our facilities, and the tennis courts. They're there. But they're only there in picture. We stopped playing varsity matches on them this past spring. USM, we're also partnered with the University of Southern Maine, who does not have tennis courts of their own. They utilize our tennis courts. They've done that for as long as I can remember. In turn, we use many of their facilities in a reciprocal, no charge type of relationship. So USM is also very vested in having courts here in our community. So just a quick update. We have averaged 30 middle school student athletes in our tennis programs, which is held in the fall. USM also plays women's tennis in the fall. And in the spring, we have our high school programs, and we've averaged anywhere from 45 to 55 students, males, females, together in those seasons. And USM plays men's tennis in the spring as well. This past year, we didn't play any home matches. We practiced only. Again, that was because we felt like in practice we could manage where we were, what we were doing, how we were asserting ourselves. It wasn't the free flow of a regular tennis match where you are doing things competitively and not worried about, your effort and how you might be there. So that was kind of what we've done. There were some comments made that I've heard that we were getting rid of the tennis programs. I want to tell you right now that is the furthest thing from my thought process. Tennis is a very, very vibrant and important program in our athletic program. I think there's this mentality, though, that tennis or any of our sports are just a sport. Educational-based athletics is how we've practiced things for a long, long time. And when you look at our core values that we talk about every day in school, we talk about those every day on the athletic fields, on the courts as well. So to think of the tennis courts or the soccer field or the basketball court as just a sport facility, that mindset needs to be those are classroom spaces. That's where our coaches, our teachers, and teaching those group of kids, many of the same things we're teaching in the classroom. So for someone to say that one is more important than the other, or it's classroom versus facility, it's just not the case. These are classrooms, and they're classrooms every day, let alone the actual classes of physical education and those sort of things that are utilizing those courts. I guess the other thing I would mention is the tennis courts are probably the most public place and publicly used facility from an athletic standpoint in Gorham. The track and the tennis court. The public has access. They utilize them. The recreation program department uses them. I can't emphasize enough the importance of the tennis courts to this community.
All right, I'll try to eat up the 1 minute he went over. That was good. That's all right. All right, next up, project number 5 was the high school parking and repaving and traffic calming measures. What this would do is in the highlighted areas here around the high school, you can see where we would grind down existing pavement, replace sidewalks for pedestrian safety, look to add traffic calming measures for some of our motorists that are young and still figuring out how to drive safely. And so that's what we would be looking to do in this project. Why now? Existing pavement is in disrepair, causing pedestrian safety issues, wear and tear on vehicles, and again, a lot of safety type related things. I know that sounds, that sounds like maybe it's an easy thing to pin things on. Oh, we need to do this paving because of safety. Well, we had, I think, probably our very highest workers' comp issue in the entire district in my history that I've ever known came from a tripping hazard on a sidewalk. So there can be significant costs involved with these kinds of safety issues. Narragansett Maintenance Building. This is project number 6. This would be to add a maintenance building to Narragansett Elementary School, where, believe it or not, Narragansett Elementary School has now become our second largest elementary school behind only Great Falls Elementary. There are no storage facilities at the current site at Narragansett, and so basically we are either storing equipment in a not so great place or we're traveling it back and forth to get to this location, which is pretty extensive. We do have 2 playgrounds on this site and a lot of other facilities and needs there. So this would kind of reduce wear and tear on equipment and save some money as well for transporting things back and forth, but it is an investment that would need to happen. So that's why. Why now? Again, current equipment stored off-site, poor conditions, maximize. We want to maximize the life of everything that we purchase with our public dollars. Project number 7, this is the second one I told you about with village parking. This one is an expansion. So the previous one was really upgrading existing site and maybe just adding that access road to White Birch Lane. This one would be an expansion. This would be looking to add a secondary parking area, which you can see over on that left-hand side. And also this would be looking to add a second area of egress from the village site. So this would allow us to basically separate out, like every other school in our district and most other schools. You typically want to have a separate lane for buses to travel and a separate lane for other vehicles, because we have a lot of elementary parents that pick up and drop off students. And so when you mix those two, that can create quite a lot of safety issues. And so this would allow us to create a separate sort of entrance and process for buses and other other traffic to go in. So basically why now? This would address a host of safety concerns that we have on the site, improve traffic flow efficiencies for parent pickup and drop off, and add visitor parking spaces that do not currently exist on the site. If you are invited to a meeting at Village Elementary School right now, you may be parking in the bus loop because there are no other spaces to park. Great Falls sidewalk replacement. This is the project number 8, the last one. There is a lot of pavement here, and I do understand that, but that's because many of these things are coming up at the same time because that's when they were done originally. But this would remove the existing sidewalk pavement, add structural gravel and drainage, and replace some new pavement in the front of Great Falls where the bus and parent pickup and drop off are occurring. Again, pedestrian safety issues are at play here along with wear and tear. Many people say, well, that's a brand new school. What are you having to do all this for? That was 2012. So it is a 12-year-old school, and it gets used quite a bit. And this is the typical wear and tear on that facility. So those are the 8 projects just listed there. You know, I just tried to give you some implications for not moving forward. The clarity, the clear piece about tonight is that we bring this forward as our set of needs. The town council decides what goes forward to a referendum for a bond for a request. And maybe it's all of it, maybe it's none of it, maybe it's some of it, maybe it is in different questions. All that, you have the fun to decide what you want to do with that. But I do want to be clear that, you know, there are implications to not doing any of it and what those are. And it's not like these are things that you can't live with, that we could, but it just kind of moves it further down the road, and these things add up then. So next year, we have another bond request that we're planning for 2026. If we only get half of this one or none of this one, then that's going to double that amount in 2026 and what we're asking for. And so it just kind of keeps snowballing. So some of the things that you would want to be aware of if we are not moving forward with these projects. The overcrowding and lack of space issues at the high school will continue, and we may have some significant issues with special education that I'm not sure how we would address. Potential increased costs for replacement in the HVAC in an emergency, so we might wind up spending money to replace the HVAC system anyway, only more if we did it in an emergency situation. Decreased life expectancy for equipment, not able to be restored properly, continued wear and tear on vehicles, pedestrian safety concerns for emergency access concerns continued at these sites, continued use of tennis courts are in question, period. And then needs continue to grow and costs continue to go up. And that is what the school committee would recommend. We're bringing this forward to the town council because we do believe that these projects are needed. So of course our recommendation would be bring them forward to the referendum to let the voters decide if these are needed or not. But certainly, again, town council, you have the ability to do any of the above things that I talked about. Thank you. And I don't know if we want to go to questions and answers now, or if what you'd like to do for process.
I think it makes more sense to just have the public comment now, and then we'll go back to.
That's fine. I get a little break. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So if anyone from the public would like to speak, again, just state your name. There's 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. My name is Lincoln McIsaac, resident of Gorham. I'm also a tennis coach, but not here in Gorham. I happen to be wearing a Gorham tennis shirt today. Do not tell my other team, please. Thank you. A little story for you. I've been coaching 15 years at that other school, and for the first time in a really long time this spring, we lost to Gorham in tennis. Yep, I'm admitting it right now, we lost. But it was impressive to watch, first of all. Nicole's team, always well coached, beat my players. But what was really impressive, or maybe not so impressive, was that it was at 10:30 at night, because the school I teach at had to have their tennis courts replaced this past year, so we didn't have facilities. So we started matches at 8:30, practices at 9. Kids didn't get home until 11:30 at 12. But here we are at Apex playing at night, paying money to rent these courts, paying bus drivers to get us there. And Nicole's team is almost ready to lose, but her number 1 player steps up and wins her match, comes from behind, wins 7 games in a row. And the best part of that story is that every single one of her teammates was sitting behind that net cheering her teammates on. And that's the importance of athletics in our district, is that it's not just about winning or losing, but it's about knowing your role on the team. It's about supporting your teammates. It's about growing. It's about battling through adversity. So having sports like that, having opportunities for our athletes to do those things are vitally important, and I'd hate to see them have to do that, at 11:30 at night, right? My situation this year was obviously very unique. I could speak to that a lot more. Tim, please feel free to reach out. Heather, please reach out to me because I can speak to you about the financial implications and also the actually just the mental implications, the impact it has on students who play sports that late at night. Feel free to prick this mine. It's not that deep, but you can pick at it anyways. The other piece is the legal obligations that we have as coaches. We will never put our players in safety issues or hazards. That if I was to come here to actually play on the Gorham courts, I would refuse to play, bottom line. I'll protect my players every time. It's also incumbent upon the athletic director who represents the schools to do the same thing, and he did that this year. Thank you, Tim, for protecting our athletes. Really, what we know about athletics, we've had 55 kids here, you say over the course of years. That, if you look at the numbers, is probably 3 times the size of some of the other athletic programs in the district. I know that speaks truly to what happens at my school. And Gorham has a great history of tennis. We've got kids who play college tennis, players that have graduated are now currently playing in college, and they're so good at tennis that I actually hire them to teach at my summer clinics. That's how good Gorham is at tennis. Final last story for you. When I moved to Gorham in 2008, didn't know a lot of people, but my real estate agent, Jan Willis, very wonderful lady, invited me to play Tuesday night tennis with her. And that's where I got to know a lot of the people in Gorham. But it's a place, the courts have always been a good place for community members to gather, to speak, to talk about whatever's going on, or just hit tennis balls at people. And believe me, I've been hit by tennis balls by 20-year-olds and 80-year-olds. It serves all of the community. So please, 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 obviously sponsor this. We need to have, but the most important thing is we need to have a plan. Okay, I know there's 8, 9 things on there. We have to have a plan for that.
Sir, it's been 3 minutes. If you could just, there's
dang
more
it.
people that
All right.
need some.
Well,
Yeah.
just make sure you have a
Yeah.
plan, and you can actually just repave those courts. Promise you, with all that pavement you're putting on those other places, you can actually do it, and that's a great way to step in between that 5-year gap. You don't have to spend $2 million. You don't have to spend like $500,000.
Thank you.
The numbers are there. Go ask the schools.
Go ahead. All right, and now we've got it working, so 3 minutes.
I was going to put it up. Ken Curtis, 118 South Street, 53-year taxpayer. And following my neighbor, Lincoln, is going to be difficult. But anyway, questions. What would be the tax increase from this $16 million thing? It kind of smacks of an end run around. We've already had a yearly tax increase that seems to cause a lot of us older taxpayers to shudder. Not again, more again. And please have a well-advertised date and time for the public to have input on this question. Please. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't see you turn it, so I.
Yeah.
My name is Ruth Kelly, and I really don't have a for or against anything. I'm just kind of confused about something because the project number 3, part 2, the driveway access to the White Birch Lane extension, as far as I know, that hasn't been approved by the planning board yet, the extension to the existing White Birch Lane from the Robie Street subdivision. The contract zone hasn't been approved yet, as far as I know, unless I missed a meeting, which might have happened because it was kind of a rough summer. So I don't know how that could be put on the bond if it's not approved by the planning board yet. So I was just confused about that. I hope that made sense, what I said. Okay. And then if it were approved, the extension to the Robie Street subdivision was approved in the future, there would be a lot of traffic, increased commuter traffic down that road. So an extension to the village school would add even more to that. That might not end up being a congestion nightmare in the end. But I mostly just wanted that cleared up because I'm a little bit confused about that, because I don't think it's been approved yet.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elle Woodman. I'm going to be a junior at Gorham High School this year. I've been playing on the tennis team for the past 2 years and hope to continue playing for the next 2 years. Our past season was both difficult and discouraging for us and our opposing teams as we didn't have a place to play. Practices were tricky and our matches were even harder as our courts were deemed unplayable. I wish that tennis was as valued as other sports at our high school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aaron Landry. I live in Gorham. I've been a teacher at the high school since 2006, and I've coached tennis since 2009. As stated before, our program is a pretty robust program. In SMAA, we consistently have the highest numbers of players that participate both on the boys and girls side, and our middle school team has, close to 30 players typically and consistently over the time that I've coached both the boys varsity team and the middle school team. One of the things that the things that I think is great about tennis is the different types of players. You've got players who, we don't get too many of them, but we get players who played only tennis, and they play lots of tennis, and they play tennis year-round. More so, we get players who come from different sports or no other sports, and we can teach them to play tennis. I look at them and I say, I find other kids, or if they're interested, I say, listen, I can teach you how to play tennis. If you come and commit, I'll teach you how to play, and you'll be able to make an impact by the time you're a junior or a senior. That's been something that has made us successful. That's what's made our program, I feel like, successful, that kids have an opportunity to be part of a team and to make impacts. And this is not the case for other schools, right? So just at last year, and this could have gone farther back, Deering had 7 players. Cheverus has 7 players. South Portland has 9 players. They have beautiful courts, 5, 6, and 7 courts, respectively. This isn't about courts, right, when it comes to a program. It's about kids. The kids don't have a voice here on this committee. They don't have a voice in the council. They don't vote. They're not a part of this problem. The problem that we have is with the facility. The facility is falling apart. There's a lot of problems. There's a lot of reasons for it. But at this point, we need a new facility. However that works out, whether you tear these ones down and rebuild them right there, to possibly have to do it again, or the problem is here. I urge you to put tennis forward. I'm speaking for kids who can't speak for themselves, and I urge you to do that for them, but also for all the people in the community who, as Lincoln was saying, are involved in tennis. And this would make it more tennis forward. Anyway, I urge you guys to vote in favor of putting it forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janet Cush. I live on Narragansett Street in Gorham, and I've been on that side of the issue, and I just want to urge you to remember that this is a democracy, and I believe that in the spirit of cooperation, there was a transparent process in the spring about the budget. There was no secret made that a bond was going to be asked for. I think this is, as far as the superintendent said, definitely a time where we've been kicking the can down the road, and I think that it's up to the town council to put this forward and let the people vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Carla Brannon. I live on Brackett Road, and I am actually fairly a new resident of Gorham.
One of the questions that I have to kind of mimic another resident is how is this going to, or what's the number that's going to affect us from an annual tax perspective? I think that is very important. And also, this is likely to happen for the next couple years based on what was presented here tonight. I think one thing to think about these projects, they're all very important. Are there ways to do some of these projects at a lower cost? On the tennis courts, is there a way to look at Little Falls? Is that even a possibility of expanding the courts over there rather than starting from scratch? Is there a way to maybe wait to do the lighting portion of that project until a later date so that we're not hitting taxpayers year after year after year with these bonds? I think what can be misunderstood is as these bonds get voted on and people do vote and they pass, they don't realize in a year that they're going to have that tax increase when their tax bill comes out. So I think it's very important that that is communicated. The other thing that I think is important is somehow, and I know it's very hard to do, I have an accounting background. I should not say that, but I do. You got to build in maintenance. You can't do these projects and spend millions of dollars and not have a maintenance plan. If the tennis courts had been maintained years ago, maybe they wouldn't be in the condition that they are in today. So I think as these projects are planned, you should consider making sure that the maintenance that needs to go with them is somehow built into the budgets. The last thing that I'll say is that the White Birch Lane, if the development of Ruby Street comes into play, there's going to be a lot of traffic there. And I don't think it's fair for residents that live there, as well as a school with young children, to have to deal with that much congestion on that side of town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Stuart McAllister, Flaggy Meadow Road. Speaking to you tonight as a parent of village students, and specifically for the project of the expansion of the parking and the access for Village School. I'd love to invite you guys to come to Village School open house night, but if that's 6 more cars there that don't need to be there, then I respectfully say that please don't come. There are so many parents involved in Village School and all of our elementary schools that there are cars parking up on the grass. People are parking over at Hannaford and the post office because there isn't enough parking for what we're doing there, to the point where when I'm driving in, I have safety concerns myself. If there was an emergency at Village School during one of those events with all of those people in that building, I know an ambulance or fire truck would have a really hard time getting anywhere near that building. So please, please consider that when you're looking at these projects, that there's more to it than just adding pavement. That parking would I don't honestly, I'm not sure if that parking would completely alleviate everything, but certainly that access road would allow for much safer pickup options. Right now you have cars driving kind of half on the pavement and half on the grass to allow for enough room for traffic to go both ways, and buses coming in at the same time. So there's definitely there's a lot of safety improvements to be had at that site, and that project would go a long way towards making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rob Woodman. I live at 23 Faith Drive, and I'm also the owner of Sink Gorham, the co-working space located next to the famous Gorham House of Pizza. Wanted to kick off just by pausing for a minute and just reflecting on the fact that we have some exciting projects on the table, right? I think we often talk about, oh, I don't like this one, or I like this one, or that one intrigues me and that one doesn't. But just want to give a shout out to the awesome staff we have in this town, many of whom are in this room. Superintendent Perry, you smashed the presentation. That was fantastic. And we're very fortunate to be in this town with an awesome group of people. Part 2, I'm a parent of a tennis player who actually popped up a little earlier. She's one of the famous 4 Woodman kids. And It's been great to see a flourish in sports. Unfortunately, my kids got way too into musical theater too quickly, and it's great that my eldest is actually hitting the sports balls as well. I love that tennis is an inclusive sport. As mentioned, 45, 50 people on the team, and there are some terrible tennis players on that team. But there are very few sports in our community where people who are terrible at a sport can enjoy it, have fun, and experience the community that comes along with tennis. For every other sport, it seems like you play for 4 minutes and then the scouts are there wondering whether you want to play travel and journey down to South Carolina for the weekend, every weekend. Tennis is not like that. It's very inclusive. Not only is it inclusive for the kids at our schools, but it's also inclusive in the community. When we think about sports that are multi-generational, we have running for those who are still able. We have biking for those who can stay upright. We had golf. We no longer have golf. And then there's tennis, and there's probably some other ones that I'm missing there, but tennis is one of those few things that any age can jump out there and hopefully have a good time and not worry about your body getting completely snapped like you would if you were trying to play football at a certain age. So I think it's something that we need to think about from a community perspective, even though a lot of it's tied to the schools, but it's something that can bring people together, whether you're good at a sport or not, or just want to have some fun and give sports a crack. The other thing I just want to mention on the tax impact side, I realize there's fear around that, totally makes sense, but I think as Superintendent Perry mentioned, anything that doesn't happen now is going to get deferred ultimately and probably get worse and even more expensive. So, there's going to be an impact at some point, and it's probably cheaper to do it today than it is tomorrow or the day after that. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no one else getting up, we are going to go back to council discussion and questions. And Superintendent Perry, you can come up because I'm sure we have questions. So we'll start the discussion. Councilor Wilder-Cross, go ahead.
I'd like an answer to the question that we had about what this impact would be on our mill rate.
Absolutely. So I had Hollis do some calculations. I think Ephraim also did some calculations on a 15-year bond. Did you, Ephraim?
Yes,
Yeah.
trust but verify.
And we verified. So
did
why don't you go
verify.
ahead and share what you have?
I believe if the entire package went to the voters, this is, again, estimates based on future
Interest
mill
rates,
rates,
yep.
interest rates, all that stuff. 10-year bond, 74 cents.
Yes.
And a 15-year bond, approximately 55 cents, give
Yep.
or take.
Yep.
Thank you.
I was waiting to see if you had another comment.
No,
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
That was
Any
my
other-
first question, and I'll think of the others after others.
Yeah, actually, and maybe we'll just have the town manager address White Birch Lane right now, just so we
Yeah,
get that out of the way.
Thank you, and the superintendent can, I guess, add any details on the road. So White Birch Lane right now connects to the back of the school department's or village school's property. It connects there to a parking lot, there's access. That is not contingent, this project, and I think what the school department is doing is not contingent upon any other future work or anything like that. Now, if a future work for a development came in, that would have to be worked into that project. But right now, if
Right.
nothing happened in that subdivision, this project is.
And both of these plans for Village Elementary School would have to go to the planning board for discussion and future, that conversation too. I mean, this is early on. We're just requesting money at this point in time to go forward with some of the pieces that need to be in play before you actually start doing things. And planning board certainly would be part of that process.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
On that piece, so if by chance the developer came through on that road, what would happen to the bond money that would be earmarked for that portion of the project?
Can I answer that question?
Yeah, go right ahead.
We wouldn't use it if we didn't need to. Yeah, so we wouldn't, if we knew that if that project was going to be forward and developed by somebody else, then we wouldn't necessarily need to go forward with the expenditure of those funds, and you could turn over the excess monies back to the town. It sounds easy. It is a little more complicated than that, but that's ultimately what could happen.
Which I believe in return goes to pay off the bond, correct?
Yes, you pay down the bond is what happens.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Siegel, you look like you have something to say.
I'm just wondering, Chair,
Yep.
how we might
Not all bonds.
discuss this conversation. I mean, should we take it project by project or just talk about it as a whole?
I mean, it's been presented to us as a whole, but I guess, I don't know if you have certain questions or comments, I guess.
No, I guess I'll just start throwing them out there. My first question, I think to all of us, perhaps, this is a small thing, but we're making the school pay application fees for planning board stuff. So the school is taking money out for the bond to then pay the town, but that's our money. It feels like a, yeah.
We actually don't do that.
Yeah.
Norm's shaking his head over there. We don't pay the application fees.
They've never done that.
It's through engineering, yep.
Got it.
So I don't know if you heard that. Did you hear that okay?
No.
It said that there could be state applications depending on the project. We would have to pay for that, but anything at the local level, we don't do.
Okay, so on the tennis courts budget, it specifically says application phase, DEP amendment and town, but it sounds like there's nothing for the town then.
No.
Okay, that is confusing then, that it says that.
I can see that.
Okay, I think, I guess starting with a lot of the village parking projects, one of my major concerns with these is that we pay so much for the whole bus and transportation system, and then putting in even more work to make it easier to drive your kid to school, where then everyone who then doesn't do that is now subsidizing the people who drive their kids to school instead of just using this bus service that we also pay a ton of money for. I understand that repaving needs to be done because of potholes, but making it easier to drive and drop off when we do the buses feels like we're rewarding behavior we don't want to be.
Okay.
And also state when looking at capacity, talking about open house, there are so many parking lots around there of local businesses that, I mean, if open house is happening on any night that's like a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday night, those parking lots are very empty, and there's even a really nice pedestrian bridge that gets to Village. To me, this feels like ways that we can, save money too as well.
Is that it, or do you?
I'll start with that. I don't want to.
All right. Go ahead, Councilor Sims.
Thanks. I think on the village parking and paving suggestions, as well as the high school paving, I would like to see more. I think there's an opportunity for the school staff and the school committee to collaborate more with the town staff and the capital improvements committee, and I'd like to see us find ways to have the town help address some of these financial needs more directly. And one specific example of that we can actually start moving forward right now. So, priority number 2 here, Narragansett HVAC, $460,000. The school can go borrow this money and pay interest, or the town could add it to next year's capital improvements budget. And we could, in that way, help the school get it paid for without having to pay interest. It's all our tax money, whether it's the school or whether it's the town side of our property tax bill. So that would be something I guess I would have a question. What would the superintendent think of that approach, and what would town manager think of that approach, and obviously my fellow counselors? Well,
I can start just by being clear that the school committee cannot borrow money. We can only go through the town to borrow money. So it would have to be a town council conversation in order for us to borrow money, which is actually what we're having right now. But the collaboration, I think, is important, and we have collaborated. I know that Norm has met with Terry at least once, probably a couple of different times, talking about some of these paving pieces and whether or not there are things that can be done by the Public Works that maybe are a little less expensive. And we did, as a result of those conversations at our last meeting, we did go back and make an adjustment to the high school paving project, in which we withdrew a section of that on Access Road. It saved about $200,000 $200,000 or so from the total project by doing that. But in looking at these projects, they've consulted with one another, and that was really the area that they thought could be done, and so we did do that. Otherwise, they didn't have any other suggestions for how that could be done together more efficiently. But certainly, Ephraim, if you want to talk at a broader spectrum around how we collaborate together between the town and the school, that's fine. But I think they did actually have those conversations.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Echo that from the superintendent. If the question is, could capital projects be taken out of the town's capital budget? Yes, they could be. But you always have to remember you're taking away from something else. Now, if the question is more, could it be budgeted in the town's capital projects and would come out of the mill rate, and then you, in a future year, then you don't have to borrow the money? Yes, it could be done in the school budget or the town budget, and you would save the bonding money. I think the reason that it's in the bond package is time is a priority for the school department versus next year's budget would delay that process at least a year.
And not just that, but every year we have tried to increase our SIPS budget, which is our capital improvement projects budget, in our school's budget, and that doesn't work because you're basically pitting educational programming against pavement, and educational programming will win every time in that conversation. And so finding a way to separate those conversations out might be fruitful, but I think also one thing to be mindful of is that I think that there is an important aspect to be able to determine what is school-related costs and what are other town-related costs. And so being able to put those in buckets and see clearly what those things are is also an important aspect, because some things, not all things, but some things we do get funding for from the state. And if it's reflected on the town side, you wouldn't receive that funding. So it's a complicated mixture.
Does that include HVAC?
There are some ways in which HVAC projects can be funded through the state. Of course, you could do a capital project, which would build a whole building, or there's also what's called a revolving renovations funds at the state level that schools can apply for outside of municipalities for specific projects. It's a competitive process. They have a limited amount of money, and unfortunately, the types of projects that we're talking about here and the situations, even though I know I said they were emergency here, and they are, if they fail, and we'll have to replace them. But those conditions are not as bad as other conditions in the state of Maine. And so often those other schools and other situations receive that funding ahead of us.
Councilor LaVoy, go ahead.
Yeah, through you to Heather. Changing gears here, but the tennis courts, do those include lights?
Yes, that number does include lighting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
This might be a question for the athletic director.
If it is, I'll bring him up, no problem.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm not a tennis player, but if I recall, there are tennis courts at the Little Falls Recreation Area. Are those potentially usable?
Yeah, thank you for, Tim's going to address that one. Go ahead, Tim.
All right, in general terms, are the courts at Little Falls usable? Yes. Are they usable for high school tennis and holding a tennis match? No. A tennis match consists of 5 matches. So that's why you would look at 5 or 6 courts. We have 4. We play 4. When those finish, in a tennis match can go from 50 minutes to 2 hours. You don't know, because that's how the game plays. There's no clock or that sort of stuff. 2 courts would not allow you to get a tennis match in an afternoon with the matches that you need to get in. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that answer your question from what you were, okay.
Yes, so there are 4 courts there, and you'd need...
There are 2 courts at Little Falls. 2 courts at Little Falls. Yes.
Okay.
We currently have 4 at the high school.
Yes.
And the project where I think it says 5 is 6. Well, yeah, the plan looked for 6 tennis courts. Yes.
And I know you've looked at repair, and I know I've heard that they're beyond repair. Like, what would happen if they were repaired and refinished with the bid that you got last year?
Right now, nobody, that company will not guarantee any of their work. And so they're basically saying, sure, we will take your money and we will make them look good. As soon as winter hits and frost hits, your tennis courts will most likely look exactly like they did when we refinish, before we refinish them. They're not guaranteeing that work. And we've seen that over the last 10 years. They've been resurfaced. They were resurfaced in 2018. They were resurfaced, I think, in 13 maybe, twice since I've been here, but I think 2 times prior. They are 29 years old. The subsurface below the pavement is no longer holding. So the frost comes in, leaves, the craters come back yearly.
One of the suggestions I'd like to make to the council is for us to consider putting 4 tennis courts at Little Falls if we're already talking about the major planning of putting 3-phase power out there and doing all of that. This feels like a way that we can actually, in the long term, save money and have all of our recreation in one area, and then makes each dollar that we're spending go further.
Could I mention that the 3-phase power is already at the middle school? Like, that already exists.
We'll be at the Little Falls pretty soon, right? Madam Chair, if I may. Carrying off of Councilor Siegel's, I guess, moving or looking at alternatives, Roby Park has space available for what would be basketball courts in the master plan, and I would look to maybe substitute out those basketball courts for tennis courts. I see no difference in the use application, to be honest.
So I think the discussion of where they can be.
And it would potentially save money because of all the illumination that's already there and everything else, so.
Yeah, I think that, we're just asking if we want to spend money on tennis courts right now. So I think the discussion about, I think we all probably have a different idea where the tennis courts could go.
Well, no, I guess I'm more amicable to spending the money on the tennis courts if they're one at a location that doesn't require additional costs to move the kids from the high school to the middle school. It is on public land, which would still allow for access to all. It meets all the criterias. The infrastructure's there. I'd still ask for the same amount of money and maybe ask for council representation, maybe 2 counselors and a school board member that would look at the plan, and say, if it met the requirement.
Or that conversation could happen at a capital improvements committee meeting. Yeah.
But I would be more supportive that way.
Yeah. Could we get an input from the
School would not be opposed to that conversation. I think that the issue for us is timing, that the courts currently are in poor shape and not able to be utilized, and so this is not something I'd want to have put off for 6 or 7 years. We have students that we want to be able to use these courts. I will tell you that in the original plans for the high school renovation project, we did indeed plan to have the courts in Roby Park, and so that would not be news to us.
So, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'll try and do an amendment to change the referendum language to say move to GMS to move to Roby Park.
I will just move. And then it leaves it open. But it would have to
be specific, though. Yeah, move to Roby Park. So that's my amendment.
In current location of the court.
Yeah, in appropriate location, and I'll do that amendment next for the representation for the council to make sure it's in the right spots. So I would want the referendum to make sure it says move the tennis courts to Roby Park, and then I'll make a second amendment afterwards to have the council have representation to ensure that
Okay, the town manager's telling me it's not permitted there, I have to go to planning board and things like that.
We're going to planning board for other things, so that's fine. We'll just put it in with the other things that are going to planning board. I think 4 out of the 5 have to go to planning
Is there
board.
a second for the amendment?
Yeah.
All right, seconded by Councilor Lavoy. All right, so I don't think we need any more discussion on that, or do you?
Did the superintendent have something to add?
No, Norm just came up and reminded me that the current estimates are site-specific, but I think that we have enough within the current ask to be able to still maneuver. So I think we're still in a good place, if you wanted to make that adjustment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And
Okay, so let's vote on the amendment to move to Roby Park. All those in favor? 7 yeas. All right, back to the rest of the item.
Yep, Madam Chair, I would make I guess a second amendment that the 2 counselors and 1 school committee member collaborate to come to an agreement on what would be acceptable at the park.
So
I might like that.
just for the tennis courts? Is that
Just for the tennis courts, yes.
Okay.
And tennis courts and funds, we'll put it that way.
Perhaps in the spirit of collaboration, that could be 2 and 2.
You want 2 and 2?
Sure.
I will not say no. So in the spirit of collaboration, 2 and 2 is my recommendation, my amendment.
Okay, is there a second for the amendment, and then we can discuss it? Second by Councilor Sims. All right, any questions about the amendment?
Could the
right.
amendment be really clearly restated?
You want to help me out on this, Ephraim? Do you want to be very clear, or do you want me to try to piece this together?
Thank you. So I think the intention is that you would, so you've already amended this so that for the voters, it's clear that whatever they're going to tackle would be in Roby Park.
Yep.
In basically the location where the tennis courts are, understanding that that has to go through the planning board, all that stuff. The intention here is to form a advisory committee.
Yep.
With a specific makeup of 2 counselors, 2 school committee members, and working jointly to move that through a process.
So be it further ordered that the town council authorize 2 counselors and 2 school committee members to advise the school and town on Roby Park and its tennis courts.
Thank you.
Everyone good with that? All right, all those in favor? 7 yeas.
And do we want, if there's money left over, do we want to put it back into the park, or do we want it to, it's probably not going to be much, but I would say.
The lighting.
If it's, Phil, if I could, if it's part of the bond, then if anything is unused, it would go back, as we mentioned earlier, to pay off the bond quicker. So that's how that would work.
I think for that part of it, though, any remaining, I guess I would do another amendment and say, be it further ordered, any remaining funds from the tennis courts would go into Roby Park for improvements. The funds remaining.
Yeah, I'm just asking if I mean, the bond question would have to specifically state that so that people understand what they were doing, so.
Yep.
Is there a second for that amendment?
No.
No.
I don't want to get too greedy.
Only because I wanted to go back to the bond. That's the
I
only
know,
reason.
I know, but I mean, if it's 100,000, I mean, it's, yeah.
Okay, all right, back to the general discussion. Any other questions, comments?
My concern is that if we send this all to the voters, it's going to fail. I'll be very honest with you, and then the school is left out in a lurch.
Yeah, so I have heavy concerns based on the school budget vote, just because we were elected to make those tough decisions up here for people, to tell them what we need to spend money on. So I guess for me, I share the same concern that it just would fail because of the large amount. And I also feel like part of me is that those other improvements are for the schools, except for the tennis courts. The tennis courts are basically, something that I feel I can a lot of that is education-based, is safety of the students, but I think the tennis courts are heavily used by the public, which has obviously been stated several times tonight. And I guess I would entertain, for the referendum question, taking the tennis courts out of the other ask, so having all the other projects together, and then keeping the tennis courts separate, and I don't know how the rest of the council feels about that.
So you're saying two referendum
questions.
Okay.
I would actually like to see a further breakdown, but I would agree that the tennis courts should be their own item. So I don't know how we want to tackle this, but I would make a motion to present the tennis courts investment as amended as its own item on the ballot.
Okay, so is there a second for that amendment?
Yeah, to see the
Councilor Siegel seconds that. All right, I don't know if
and
you
then
want to
there
discuss
would
that
be
more?
and there would be further discussion
Right,
of how
so-
we might further.
So I
split up,
guess,
yeah.
just for discussion and clarity, and to keep us from amending an amendment to an amendment to an amendment tonight, right?
Yep.
Can we just break down what people are looking to break down instead of making an amendment right now?
I see.
For one item?
Gotcha.
If you have other suggestions, let's make
Fair
other
enough.
suggestions, let's have a discussion, and then
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
basically make an amendment once the discussion is had.
Fair enough. So I'll withdraw that amendment then if I can do that. Is that?
So I'll make an amendment
1 second.
to remove an item.
Yeah, I have a little information that might impact this discussion. Norm just came up to me and reminded me that these sites are currently, they're being looked at as a whole, or permitted as a whole. And so if we break them up, for example, the high school modular expansion and the tennis court right now would be one DEP permit. If you break them up, you're having to go to the permitting twice. So just FYI.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, if we break up the item, I mean, technically the tennis courts, and I'm not advocating for the tennis courts, but the tennis courts are part of the project to expand the modulars. And so in 2 years, those tennis courts are going to be gone. If we send it to referendum by itself, and by chance it does fail by itself, we will be without tennis courts. I mean, that is just a flat fact. And so I'm looking at this as a whole piece. However, I do think we could reduce, I think items 3 and 7 are where I'm looking at.
Well, on both items 3 and 7, particularly 7, but actually it's both of them. I mean, we're just talking about now how it's too expensive to repave a tennis court. And we're talking about adding how much more pavement at Village School? We're talking about adding a lot of it, and that's all going to have to be maintained over and over again, and that's going to become a high expense. So I think, I might frame it a little bit differently from how it was framed earlier, but I think that, building more roads at the Village School, it costs a lot of money, and it's not necessarily the best solution. So that's what I kind of was getting at. I'd like to see us talk more with town council committees and the school committees to think more holistically about how can we encourage, how can we make it safer for the kids to walk and bike to school so their parents don't have to drive them, and create more traffic that everybody complains about. I think that we'll just end up creating more traffic over time by building more pavement and making it easier for more parents to drive, and that our school buses will be sitting emptier, despite the fact that at that point we'll be paying more for the school buses. So I think there's some challenges there, and I'm not a huge fan of some of what's proposed in those items. And again, we're talking about adding significantly more cost to our annual budget over time by adding that much more pavement.
Do you want to remove 3 and 7?
I mean, I would be open to doing that at this time. I mean, I think we're all concerned about the overall amount that's being proposed, so that obviously helps lower that.
I'll make the motion.
Well, I want to finish the discussion first so that we don't, go ahead. You haven't said much.
Yeah. the way I see it, this was the list that was sent to us in priority, based on needs. He looked it over, combed it through with Norm and Heather. This is their priority list. I just don't feel comfortable telling them, well, no, this is not a priority. I know at the end of the day, we have to decide up here to send this to the voters. A specific example was just discussed at Village parking expansion. My kids played sports on those fields over there on Saturday morning rec programs. It's not safe to get your vehicle with your little ones. And that's just on Saturday mornings. There's school events, there's buses during the week. I believe Heather and staff when they say there's safety concerns. And the same goes for, the high school and the Great Falls. So to me, I think that all these items should stay together as one and go to the voters. And to that, is there a way that the voters can see how much it will affect their mill rate when they vote on this?
Thank you. Good question. So traditionally, we don't do that for a variety of reasons. One, it's a guess. And it's a guess because often this goes through several fiscal years, way out beyond. Like right now, we don't know 100% what the mill rate will be for this coming tax cycle. This bond, if approved, we'll go out, get the bond probably late fall, January. First payment won't be till next fiscal year. It might be an interest-only payment, depending on how it's structured. So I can't give you an estimate. What the voters typically see is a fiscal note with an estimate on interest, projected interest, what this will cost overall, and kind of a breakdown of the specifics, if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So for me, I guess I'll speak now.
Okay.
So for me, if we're saying that the tennis courts affect the high school, I'd combine those into one. I like the a la carte idea, actually, for the voters, personally. I know it's not the right term, but that's what I'm going to use anyways. So, but remember, you're talking about an $11.5 million combining of that one item, right? So chances are far lower, in my opinion, to pass because it's higher. Okay, but if one leads to the other, that's where we're at this point. Then I'd do, for me, if I was just picking them off the list here, I'd do 2, 8, and 5 as their own items, and then you have to have the village items as one again, because you're talking about earthwork, paving. It's going to be cheaper in the long run to do them all at the same time. You're not going to mold a vendor to come out and just do one phase of it, but not the other. That's just stupidity at its finest. Great Falls sidewalks. Honestly, I think we need to do those before they get any worse, because if they get worse, it's only going to cost more. This is pavement we're talking about on the sidewalks, right? Not concrete.
We have the, yes, it's pavement, it's not concrete. And we have is it granite sides on the sidewalks there? Already existing, yep.
Already existing, so we're not changing granite. I just hate when we put concrete sidewalks down, so in 5 years we salt them and then we have to redo them all over again.
No, this is tar.
Okay. All right. So I guess that would be my suggestion, if I was making a suggestion. If we are saying we want to send everything to the voters, I would do it a la carte, but I'd combine the items that have to be combined to get the most bang for our buck if we're going to do it. So that's my suggestion. If we want to take stuff out, I'm happy to hear about it. I obviously have items that I would pull out, but I want to hear what everybody else has to say.
Yeah, I've been thinking about breaking things out and things like that, trying to find the success and, doing something, I guess, having something happen. If people are, I've heard people strongly say that if this number gets presented, regardless of what the project is, they're going to say no. So that's what I'm trying to avoid. But I'm interested to hear what other people think of.
Well, and I think to your point too is if this whole thing gets presented and passed, I don't think we're going to have to worry about overcrowding the high school in 3 years, because I think you're going to see people leaving town at this point. So,
Oh, and so just to Lee, I think Councilor Pratt's suggestion makes sense to me. I want to make sure I understood what your suggested breakdown would be. I would suggest, like you said, so project number 4, the tennis courts would be a separate item?
You would combine the tennis courts and project 1.
Okay, so
they
1
have
and
to
4.
be done at the same time.
I got it, right, yeah. So 1 and 4 would be a combined project.
Yes.
3 and 7 would be a combined project.
Correct, and the rest would be individual standalones.
Oh, they would each be an individual? Okay.
We'll be talking about.
I don't feel like the pavement, the traffic calming measures and the paving at the high school necessarily have to be part of the tennis court / movement.
I would support that breakdown. I think that's a good way to do it.
So then what about the voters now that are, you're going to the polls, you don't know what's going to pass, and so the big question mark here is how is that going to affect my taxes?
Well, you can break out those numbers.
Yeah.
It's a number regardless. I mean, it doesn't have to be one number. You can break out to say that $11.5 million equals this much mill rate impact.
Estimated.
Right, estimated. We could give a percentage difference of what it potentially could be.
Yep.
Madam Chair, if I may, everybody knows I'm not a real big spender. However, if we're going to go to the public with an item of this size that does as much as it does, we have to market it to the public. And part of it is us marketing it. And if I vote yes, I will be marketing this as this is something that's needed for the future of the town. We will have phase 2 for the modulars in 2 years coming up as a referendum. This is positioning ourselves to, I guess, weather the amount of kids that are here. And so some of these items, yes, we could stagger them or show them on a ballot, but I think it creates too much confusion. And I'm one of those, I'd rather just take out 3 and 7 and call it a day and provide the taxpayer one number and say this is why we're doing it. So
Oh, no, again, I said I want to hear from everybody, so, yeah.
No, and I think that's where my thoughts are going, but so if Great Falls Sidewalk was a project and it was the only thing that passed, because it was cheap, then we'd be taking out a bond for $240,000.
Yeah.
So that's,
yeah, it's kind of.
so that's where I'm kind of, weighing the options. Yeah, do I want everybody to weigh in on each individual project? Sure, but I don't know.
Again, why not add the $240,000 of the Great Falls sidewalk to the capital improvement on the town side? I don't understand why we can't just do that. Why do we have to borrow money?
Put it on next year's budget.
Yeah. Why can't we just do that? Let's just do that.
You want to make an amendment? See if it goes through?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on. Town manager.
Thank you.
To death, I guess.
I think, generally speaking, I think we can look at these next year projects and look at sharing resources like we already have been, but the other thing, that this council cannot bind a future council on next year's budget. The council makeup changes. I would just caution you against that. I think it's definitely worth looking at and something that we should analyze in next year's budget that we've taken the baby steps on this year. I think, just generally speaking, as simple as possible for the voters to understand, and however the council wants to do that, and then I need you to give us an order on if there's 2 or more questions, I need to know what order they're going to be in, because I'm not going to pick that order. And that has to factor into your overall decision on it. So that being said, I just recommend as simple as you can and getting as much factual information out there to explain what the voters are voting on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I know everybody's like thinking right now, but.
I'm so concerned that the whole thing will fail. And we need these things. And I don't know the way to make it more palatable. I am kind of thinking combining the high school and the tennis courts as one item, all the rest in a second item might work better. At least they're two significant sizes of amounts of money to be bonded rather than small ones. And I think that kind of combines the
educational program versus
benefit
operations.
to
Yes.
our education. I mean, I remember at our meeting, I was thinking about, okay, is this all about education or recreation? And I went home thinking, oh my God, of course recreation is education, but I'm not sure that everyone understands that. Everyone does understand cost and taxes and all of that, and they just see it as, oh gosh, they don't really need that to make our kids smart. And so if we can combine them, I think it really tells people this is education. It is. And the rest of it is infrastructure stuff that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy. I know how I would vote if I went to the polls. I'm just saying, if it were taken apart that way, I would have an easier vote.
Could we just clarify which project numbers were you suggesting?
The high school cafeteria expansion with the tennis courts.
So 1 and 4?
Yep.
And then the rest as a separate item?
One bump, yep.
I think Stuart from the school committee would like to add something.
Thank you. This time as the vice chair and the chair of the finance committee. One conversation that I haven't heard yet is I do hear a little bit of concern on the cost. And I will advocate for this entire, all 8 projects. But we did spend a lot of time figuring out a priority on this. So if there is truly a concern about cost, maybe instead of picking and choosing, we start at the bottom of that priority list and work. There's a reason why these things are in the order that they are. So if the conversation's not going to move forward with the total package, maybe I would respectfully request a conversation about just maybe looking at some of those lower ones. Saying full well that as a citizen, I advocated for number 7, but knowing that if you're looking for stuff to cut, that's at the bottom of the list. I fully understand that. But those are in a priority order, and I would be concerned that we might not be addressing the needs the way that the school committee and the finance committee really intended. And we could see a Narragansett maintenance building approved when we really could use the Narragansett HVAC instead. So
Yeah.
that's
I appreciate
just providing that context from the
I appreciate
committee.
that, yeah, that
Thank
input. Yeah, that makes more sense than
Yeah.
us
Well, and
switching things around, so.
I have a suggestion based on that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we could break it into 2 ballot questions, line items 1 through 4, and then line items 5 through 8. That would be another way to potentially split it into 2 items, which is not an insane amount it's not terribly complicated.
Or,
I think it's just,
yeah, or I think we cut what we, at this point. So like, look to Stuart's point, right? And believe me, I've been to many a village open houses. I saw you at most of them. So I get it. I mean, it's a nightmare in there, but we all survived it. So for me, I guess to that point, if we were looking at doing something, I would say 5 through 8 would go away, in my opinion. Altogether. 3, and I know it's going to be done, but here's my problem is I've got that underlying factor of we're applying for elementary schools, and I know it's not going to happen overnight, and I know it's not going to happen anytime soon. It could be 10 years. But we're going to put pavement in, we're going to build roads, we're going to do everything else, and chances are we're going to shutter the school at the end of the day. I mean, for me, I mean, we're building infrastructure for something that we're talking about getting rid of. So, Stuart.
I absolutely get your concern, but I don't think the town's going to get rid of any of these properties. There's plenty of things that we could do with Village School And I can't imagine, we could look at options for, using it for town purposes or selling it to, for affordable housing apartments, but nobody would build a project that big without a second access. So we could view it as a waste now or an investment in a future property.
Agreed, but it could be their second access is more my thought process here, not necessarily for us to shoulder as a selling point that really road infrastructure doesn't add a lot of costs. So.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, it's absolutely hard figuring out what we're going to do when we've got this, we don't know what's going to happen, but if, the proposal was, we have to do something now, and we'll see where you guys decide on taking that one.
Thank you.
Chair, my other concern about putting an access road there is that's just more cut-through stuff. People are going to complain about cut-throughs. I mean, you're going to have people, turning onto White Birch Lane to go through Village, to go on, snake through all of those residential streets and through a school just to avoid traffic lights if we put that road there. That's also my, big concern.
Yeah, my key concern is I don't want to see the Narragansett HVAC fail here. So
Agreed.
I want to make sure that, it makes it through the winter here. I went to Narragansett. That school looks the same as when I went to Narragansett, other than the new modulars out back. Great job keeping up with it, but I mean, it looks the same. So I'm guessing it's the same heating system as when I went there, basically, at this point. So let's call a spade here.
To that point, I have a question to the town manager through you here. Okay, so if it goes to bond and it passes,
referendum.
We also next year just put in our capital improvements, or put in our capital part 2 to then just, I guess, pay down the bond quickly.
Thank you. I mean, you could.
No, that goes against the will of the people.
My recommendation, though, would be if there's something on this list that you want to try to work jointly on next year, I'm just going to take Great Falls sidewalk, for example, low-hanging fruit, relatively inexpensive item compared to everything else. And also, generally speaking, we've talked about this at the committee level. We have the same prices on the town and the school side. The town side, we're used to getting things done very cheaply, but it doesn't always check all the boxes of what the school department's working on. That's what we have to work together on. Could we do those sidewalks way cheaper? Yeah, but we're probably not doing them to the level that the school department's looking for. So, but going back to your bond question, I wouldn't bond an amount that small, and if it was standalone by itself, we'd figure something else out because it's not worth going through the process. And I think we could just budget for that or plan for it at a later date. So if the council's looking to shave an item off this, yes, we could definitely look at that as a joint project or something like that at a later date, but I would not bond it, then pay for it again.
Sorry, I guess my question was, can we, I mean, if we put these all together as 1 through 4 and it all passes, but can we at a later date use capital to pay down a bond quicker? That's what I'm seeing some.
Yes, I think we could always pay off a bond quicker. Municipal bonds, they get their interest. It's not like your mortgage, you pay it down quicker. They're going to get their money one way or another. So as far as getting the bonds off the books, yes, we could, but it's not necessarily going to save us a lot of money.
Understood. Thank you. I agree with Councilor Pratt on doing just items 1 through 4. That's the first time for everything.
You see the look of amazement in my face. Yeah.
So I think that if that's something, I think we've discussed every which way, but if you want to make an amendment to that effect, or?
Okay, I'll make an amendment. I would like to amend this item to reflect only projects 1, 2, and 4, based on a 15-year bond.
1, 2, and 4. Okay, is there a second? Second by Councilor Siegel. All right, and now we can discuss that, just 1, 2, and 4, correct?
Correct.
So that'll be there'll be one line item on the ballot?
All those 3 together.
1, 2, and 4?
Somebody do the math and tell me what that.
I'll do it.
That's 13.
I'm over here adding. It's about 13 million.
13.2, 1, 2.
13.2, yeah, okay, I was close. And you're saying a 15-year bond?
Bond, correct. Not that we, yeah. And my guess is this would be the typical no interest, or no interest first year? Is that how you guys
Usually
typically do
what
it?
happens is we'll do this, the referendum would occur in the fall.
Right.
We wouldn't go out to bond until the
No
spring.
principal.
The first year's payment in the first fiscal year will be interest only, and then the principal payment will kick in the second year. Hollis, did we want to double check the number that was the total for those three projects?
Yeah.
12,035,825.
On a
I
10-year
did,
deal.
124.
Wait. You're just looking at the total of those three projects, right? Yes.
Thank you.
The school department wants to do 10-year note.
Heather, is that a 10-year?
That's something that can be discussed. I mean, that's not something we typically.
Yep, no, just curious.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so that's 12,000.
What are we discussing?
So now, I guess if anybody has any comments, now that everybody's done the math, on sending 12 million, whatever the number is that Hollis just said. Any other comments and thoughts on that?
Could you just list off the projects for the
yeah.
record of people watching?
Yep.
2, 4.
Yep, so it's the high school expansion, the cafeteria expansion, modular phase 1 additions, the Narragansett HVAC, and the rebuild of the tennis courts and move them to Roby Park as we changed it, so.
I just want to remind people, we sat up here and listened to Stuart talk about this was their priority level.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I just want to remind people.
Yep. Are you all set, Heather?
I think so. Our numbers agree, right? Yes. Okay, we're
Could
good.
you repeat that number?
Hollis, you want to say it? You can speak. You can do it.
I'll bring my number.
The microphone's at the right level.
I know, that's great, thank you. So we're looking at $12,035,825.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, no other questions, discussion on that? All right. All those in favor of the item as amended to include projects 1, 2, and 4?
Did we vote on the amendment to change it?
This is the amendment.
Yeah.
We're voting on the amendment, not on the
Oh, on
item,
the
right?
No,
Yeah.
no, yep. All those in favor? All right, 5 yeas. All those opposed? Myself and Bob.
Discussion on the item.
I just want to see it.
All right, and now we'll vote on the item as amended.
Can you have it read with the,
Oh, okay, all the changes in it, hold on. Lori, you got, oh, she's gonna go back some pages, hold on.
Yep.
2 pages.
if you need a minute, let us know.
Chair, just a question. Will this vote be on the ballot itself?
The, you mean
Yes.
how many for and against?
Yes.
Yes, yep.
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 On the item.
Not the amendment.
Ballot question. On the ballot question, yeah.
On the ballot question, but on the item, not on the
whole item.
amendment.
Yep.
Right.
This vote here will be
Yes,
written on
next
the
vote
ballot.
that we take, yes.
So the first amendment was to move the tennis courts from Gorham Middle School to Roby Park.
Mhm.
And then there was an amendment to add 2 council members and 2 school committee members to collaborate on an agreement on the tennis courts and funds, to form an advisory committee. That was that, right?
Yep.
And then the next one failed, so we'll do that one. And then the amendment to just do project number 1, 2, and 4 together for $12,035,825. And that
Okay.
passed.
Okay.
That's what we're for.
Perfect.
There will be a public hearing.
Yes,
Correct.
and that's
Before
part
the
of the,
vote. Just-
that's part of the order that there's a,
Yep.
gonna be a public hearing. Yep, before the election, yep. All right. All those in favor? All those opposed? Just me. 6 to 1.
Madam Chair, if I may, could I have the mill rate impact that would be on both the town budget, town school budget, and the bond referendum as presented.
Oh, I can get
Yeah,
this
we
one.
have to figure it out.
I'm looking for mill rate impact
Yeah.
For just this?
for this, and then what will be in August projected.
I don't know if we can break it out like that.
Do we not have the mill, we don't have that
No.
yet? Oh, okay.
I'll get it to the council when I
Somewhere in between there, so it'll be more than that.
Right now, it's like 36.
35? Yeah, I was gonna say
37 cents,
35, 36.
I just wanted a number so that,
roughly.
Right.
Item 2024, 8-5, action to consider reviewing the gross management ordinance with regards to certain types of smaller dwelling units.
Okay, I'm
Counselor
gonna pause you for a second. Can we just take a 5-minute break?
yeah,
Because we've all
recess.
drank a lot of water. Thank you.
Recess.
Recess.
I can appreciate that.
Better water, did you?
Oh, I
Sorry.
drank it.
Passing them down.
I drank it.
Yeah. I went to the caffeine.
Can't do that, I won't sleep.
All right, and we're back with item.
Item
go ahead.
2024-8-5, action to consider reviewing the growth management ordinance with regards to certain types of smaller dwelling units, Councilor Sims sponsored. Proposed order 24-107, order that the town council forwards to the ordinance committee for review and recommendation, amending the growth management ordinance to allow for exemptions for smaller dwelling units of 1,000 square feet or less in Gorham's growth areas within 1,000 feet of a public transit route that do not generally promote higher enrollment in the Gorham School Department. And be it further ordered that the council asks the ordinance committee to factor in revenue positive development when reviewing the exemptions.
Is there a motion?
Moved.
Second?
I'll
Councilor Sims. All right, do you want to?
In the interest of time, I'm not going to
Okay.
I won't, bore everyone. I'm sponsoring this item with the stated goal of improving our property tax challenges.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Question to the town manager through you. I know the growth management ordinance, if I recall, when it went in, didn't need to go through the planning board. Do these changes need to do that?
No.
Or? I guess this would just go to ordinance and then back to council.
Correct.
Thank you.
Do this. That's all
agree.
I've got to say. Overdue.
All right, all those in favor? 5 yeas, all those opposed? 2, Gagnon, Phillips.
Item 2024-8-6, action to consider accepting a staff recommendation to hire a consulting firm for wayfinding signage, administrative sponsored. Proposed order 24-108, order that the town council accept staff recommendation to hire the Better Group Incorporated to conduct a wayfinding sign analysis and design project for the town of Gorham.
Your motion? Councilor Lavoy, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Siegel. All right, town manager?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is mostly an administrative item to accept staff's recommendation to appoint or hire the Beta Group to do our wayfinding signage analysis. As the council probably recalls, we've been working on this for a while. Started and it's kind of what our sign's going to look like in Gorham, and then we kind of went out and did an RFP. There's funding through ARPA funding as well as the town's capital budget and TIF funding. And Kevin and Tom are here to answer any questions if you have any. Otherwise, we'll plan to kick that off pretty soon.
Any questions?
Just really glad this is moving forward.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Okay. All right, all those in favor? Yes.
Item 2024-8-7, action to authorize the town manager to enter into a purchase and sale agreement with Northland Enterprise for Lot 1 of the Gorham Industrial Park West, Councilor Phillips sponsored. Proposed order 24-109, ordered that the town council authorizes the town manager to execute a letter of intent and enter into a purchase and sales agreement for Lot 1, 15.55 acres within the Gorham Industrial Park West for the sum of $1,100,000 as outlined by the terms presented in the LOI.
Is there a motion? Motion by Councilor Pratt, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Lavoy. All right, and this is pretty straightforward. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very quickly, we're excited to potentially be entering into a purchase and sale agreement with Northland Enterprises. That specific lot is permitted for a fairly large building, I think in excess of 70,000 square feet. And yeah, looking forward to working with them if the council is willing to enter into a purchase and sale agreement.
Okay. Any questions? All right. All those in favor? 7 yeas.
Item 2024-8-8, action to consider authorizing the release of up to $1,100,000 in TIF funds for the purpose of completing construction on the road infrastructure of the Gorham Industrial Park West, Councilor Phillips sponsored. Proposed order 24-110, order that the town council authorizes the release of up to $1,100,000 in TIF funds for the final phase of the road construction of the Gorham Industrial Park West.
Is there a motion? A motion by Councilor Lavoy, seconded by Councilor Siegel. Town manager?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you can see, the numbers more or less line up, which is a good thing from the prior item. This would mostly, say 95, 98% complete the Gorham Industrial Park roadway and infrastructure. There'd be some conduit and electrical expenses after that. But it would be pulling money from our TIF accounts, which would leave us with a healthy balance going into next year before we even commit taxes for FY26. And as you can see from the following item, the intention is to replenish those funds where we can. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I guess for the sake of full disclosure, and I guess I'm just that guy tonight, I should disclose that I work for Shaw Brothers Construction. They are the road contractor. I don't feel like I'm biased on this, but I mean, if nobody wants me to vote, I can just sit here and you guys can vote on your own without me. It's fine either way. I don't care. So.
I have no problem with it.
Well, you probably should sit, though.
Yeah,
I mean, if
I'll
you're
just
in the
say,
contract,
you folks vote.
abstain.
How's that
Just
sound?
abstain.
I'm just going to abstain. Yeah.
All right, any other questions?
I just want to thank the town staff. I know this has been a lot of work, and we're finally starting to see a lot of like public.
7 yeas.
Item 2024, 8-10, action to consider appointing a town councilor to the Metro Board of Directors, administrative sponsored. Proposed order 24-112, order that the town council appoints councilor as a transit representative from the Gorham to the Metro Board of Directors.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion. Councilor Pratt, is there a second?
What, do we need to choose? I
Yeah,
think
so we're gonna, nope.
You make an amendment to put them in.
Yeah, we just put in a name, yeah.
Just a blank.
I have a question for the town manager. Didn't we say we wanted 2 seats? Did we try that?
Yes, and I'm not it.
Okay.
Yes, excellent question. So typically what we have done, and it's 100% up to the council, is we'll have a councilor and a staff member.
Oh, okay.
So Tom Poirier and myself have been, since we joined Metro, we've been just kind of going to the meetings until such time as we kind of figured out what was going on and set up the council for an appointment. The council could do 2 seats if you'd like, if there's interest. I found it successful in the past with GPCOG and some of the other organizations to have a staff member and a councilor. But it's entirely up to the council.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there was another seat.
Yeah, the intention would be if you keep a staff member, Tom would be our other appointment to Metro.
All right, anybody want to pick somebody?
I'll nominate Councilor Siegel.
Okay. Is there a second for that nomination?
I'll
Or we're
second
amending
it.
the order? Okay, Councilor
I'll nominate
Bonner-Cross.
Lou Sims, no.
All right, so we're amending the order to put in Councilor Siegel. So all those in favor of the amendment? Yep, 7 yeas. And we'll vote on the item. All those in favor? 7 yeas. And hopefully you are accepting that. And you just put you in.
Didn't really matter, did it?
No, it doesn't.
No?
Excited.
Item 2024, 8-11, action to consider sending a zone change to the ordinance committee for map 106, lot 46 in the Gorham Village, Councilor Phillips sponsored. Proposed order 24-113, ordered that the town council forward to the ordinance committee for review and recommendation, amending map 106, lot 46 from urban residential to the conditional zoning district of the McClellan House, Gorham Village Dental, neighboring the parcel.
Is there a motion? Motion by Councilor Lavoy. Is there a second? By Councilor Pratt. Sims. I'm looking at the screen.
It's okay.
So I'm just trying to. All right. So I sponsored this item, even though I didn't know I did, but thank you. So I'm assuming this is a request from
Yes,
the people that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the old McClellan house that the town sold, I think just prior to my arrival, purchased is a dentist's office now. They bought the abutting parcel next door, which kind of sneaks behind a little at the back of the municipal building. That has a special zoning district just around that lot. They're looking to expand kind of the dentist's office and do some other stuff with the abutting lot. So this would just forward to the ordinance committee to look at changing that zone to help them out as far as their business and expanding that footprint slightly.
Okay, because that's a historic district too, so they have all the conditions and things like that.
Yeah, and I think if you have any specific questions on it, Tom was here when the council adopted it.
Yeah, I just would make sure that that historic piece stays in there. But any questions?
Madam Chair?
Yep.
Sorry, Councilor Pat, I have to ask a question on this one. Is this going to encompass the entire lot? Because that is a lot of acreage on that parcel, right?
I think they're looking for the entire lot.
Are they looking for the entire lot?
Yeah.
Because that goes right behind our municipal center here. Yes.
It goes about halfway down the building.
Yeah. So I'd want, I guess we'll find out at ordinance, but I guess I'm concerned about how much of that would be zoned. I guess. Yeah, I know. I guess I'd want more information on it.
I would assume that would happen at ordinance, but
Yeah.
any other questions? Go ahead.
Just, Chair Phillips, I share your concerns about a historic building.
Hopefully they don't
staying
drill my
historic.
teeth.
Yeah, I guess sending it to ordinance to look at is a good idea, but there are some concerns with doing that, so I guess just make sure ordinance committee, so.
Would mean the folks would let the ordinance committee know what they had in mind?
I would assume so.
What they were
You'd get more
planning to
information,
do there?
Yeah, I think there's some generalized ideas that have been run by town staff. There would have to be a zone change. They may have to go to in-house site plan review and/or the planning board. Tom can speak to that if the council wants him to.
I'll be quickly, I promise. Yeah, we've had very general discussions. There's been talk back and forth. They're looking to do mixed use there. They understand it's a historic building. If they're going to tear anything down, it may be the garage. That's not historic to get access back there. They're looking to expand. At least they've talked about it really early on, expanding the current dentist's office and then moving some of that parking over to the other lots. But it's still too early on to talk through what was talked about. Okay. They just want to have a discussion with the council to see what you want to see on the site, and I think they're flexible.
Okay.
I think it'd be a great opportunity to at least discuss it and talk about how we might effectively address both the concerns of maintaining the historic character while also being able to allow for some additional, a mixed-use development is going to be a significant net positive benefit to the property tax base. Totally recognize that needs to be balanced with, concerns about the village character. And I think this would provide an excellent case study for us to have that discussion and try to figure out how we could actually keep both of those competing interests satisfied.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? 7 yeas.
2024-8-12. Action to consider instructing the ordinance committee to work jointly with the town of Wyndham on zoning changes in Little Falls. Councilor Phillips sponsored. Proposed order 24-114. Order that the town council instructs the ordinance committee to work through staff with the town of Wyndham for implementation of zoning changes for the South Wyndham Little Falls Village Revitalization Plan.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
All right, second by Councilor Sims. Okay, and this is another one that I sponsored. That's
We thank you again. Thank you, Madam Chair. Essentially, there's no specific language proposed. What this is doing is authorizing staff to start working jointly with Wyndham and then bring a dialogue and then future changes from both communities as identified in that master plan to their respective ordinance committees to begin that process to try to align some of the zoning and development and revitalization of Little Falls. Is not going to be a very quick process, but it's kind of allowing us to reach out to our counterparts in Wyndham and start that dialogue.
so it'll be a lot of staff work on the beginning.
It'll likely be a lot of staff work at the beginning, then bouncing it off the respective committees
Okay.
until such time as something more aligned happens, unless Tom tells me otherwise.
He's going to come tell you.
30 seconds, Tom.
Real quickly, we have hired North Star Planning, us and Wyndham jointly, to start doing the zoning work. So it'll be North Star working with the two different councils to get that language drafted with staff.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? 7 yeas.
Item 2024 8-13, action to consider supporting a grant application through Safe Streets for All for improvements to the Gray Road and Libby Ave section, administrator sponsored. Proposed order 24-115, order that the town council endorses and authorizes staff to submit an application for design improvements to the Gray Road and Libby Ave intersection through the Safe Streets for All Federal Safety Improvement Program.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
By Councilor Sims. I have one comment. As long as it's not a roundabout or a rotary, I'm good. But go ahead.
Thank you. No promises what the engineers will dream up. This is an endorsement of a grant application just for design and engineering, which for a major intersection like that can be very, very substantial. So if we are lucky enough to get this grant, there's a little bit of upfront investment on our part. Then the federal match would provide the engineering, survey, design, all that stuff. And then eventually we'd have to either put in through PACS, MDOT project, or fund the project ourselves.
Questions? All those in favor? 7 yeas. And everybody's favorite time?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Seconded by Councilor Sims. All those in favor? 7 yeas. Good night. Thank you.